We can animate a line in ArcGIS Pro using stop motion technique. This method is very good for showing the path of things traveled. There are a few ways we could do this, and Esri has a very good video on this, but that method does require an advanced Pro license for some of the tools. And we're going to look at how to do this with a basic license. Also, that video uses the range function, and we're going to use the time function. So in this project, we're going to show the race to be the first person to reach the South Pole, which was between Amundsen and Scott in 1911. The red line is the route taken by Amundsen, and the blue is the one taken by Scott. Let's concentrate on Scott first. This is our line showing the route, and this is what we want to animate. So it's a single line from A to B. And what we want to do ultimately is to split this line into many smaller lines. The first thing to decide is how long each of these lines is going to be. Scott takes 78 days to get to the pole, so if we measure the line and divide that by 78, we get 18.9 kilometers per day on average. Now obviously that's a general figure, he didn't travel that same distance every day, but that's good enough to get an idea of where Amundsen and Scott were in relation to each other. Now with stop motion, the smaller each line segment is, the smoother the line will animate. But for this project, splitting this line into 78 smaller lines is going to be good enough for what I need. The point is, if you are doing this, have a line and have a distance where you're going to split the line at regular intervals. So to do that, let's go to the geoprocessing tools, and we want to generate points along lines. And this is going to just generate points right along that single line there. So our input layer is going to be our line, and the output feature class will be a points layer. Now we need to define the distance, which in this case is going to be 18.9 kilometers. Now when we run that, we will produce a layer which is a points layer with a point every 18.9 kilometers along that line. So if we just turn off the line, just to be clear. And this is now going to be the basis for our smaller lines. So let's go back to the geoprocessing, and this time we're going to call another geoprocessing tool called points to line. And this time our input feature is going to be that points layer, and the output feature class is going to be a line this time. Now we don't need to do the other parameters except the line construction method. That needs to be construct 2-point line. And once we run that, we will have reconstituted our line layer. Except this time it's not one line, it is split into many lines. And we can see that if we open the attribute table. So if we go to the bottom of the line and we highlight the first row, we can see that we've got a short line, and then the next is another short line, and so on. So it's all been split into just very small lines, 18.9 kilometers, and that's going to be the basis of our animation. So to do that, we're going to need another column, and that is going to be called day, and this needs to be called a date field because we're going to use time. So let's save that. And we're going to populate this using the calculate field. And we need to enter a bit of Python in here. So I'm going to paste some in that I've written earlier. And this is defining a assign date function. And in the code block, we've defined the function. And what this does is it is going to enter a date, which is the 1st of November 1911, which is when Scott's expedition started. And then it's going to iterate over each row, adding a date by 1 day. So let's, in the expression box, call that assign date function. And then if we apply that, we can see the first row has that 1st of November date, and then it's the 2nd of November, 3rd of November, 4th of November, and so on. So that's all set up. So the next thing is we need to go to the properties of the layer, and we go to the time option, and we're going to enable time on this layer. So let's just OK that. So that is now enable, and we've actually now gone to the time ribbon. So let's run that, and we can see that as it runs through the time, it's showing the particular line segment that's associated with that time. And if in fact we remove the start date and then run it, it then doesn't remove the previous time option, so we get this animation effect as it just runs through, showing each line in sequence. And we can actually create a video from this, and what you would do as well is you just repeat that process with all these geoprocessing tools for any other lines you're animating or any other features, such as the Amundsen line. And when you've got it all set up, we can go to the animation, show the timeline, and what we can do is we can go to the start of the sequence and then create a keyframe, and then we go to the end of the sequence and then add another keyframe, and we can actually define how quick and how slow the playback is as well. Here it's 3 seconds. If we could do 15 seconds, for example, it will be slower, and then we can run that. Now what you should note is that it's always very clunky on this animation playback, and when you've actually exported the video, it's usually a lot smoother, so don't be put off by the poor quality of the kind of review. So once we're happy with it, we can then go to this movie option here, and we can just choose the format and we can just output it, and it'll output it as an MP4 video, and that'll be your animation. Now I've used a time sequence of per day to animate, but you can use any sequence of time for those individual line segments. It could be by minute or seconds or anything. Just give each line an incremental date, which the time function will then display. With your animation, if you want to add other features to the video, like labels and overlay images, you can add those in Pro, but to be honest, it's much easier to do that in video editing software, if you have it. And there's the video, and if you'd like to see the final video with the animated lines and all the other media added to tell a story, just go to the link in the description. So that's it. Follow for more GIS content coming soon.